Hi, I'm Kairos, and welcome to Power Ideas. For those of you who are new to the channel, I'm a technical services engineer. I help ensure that our corporate customers are provided and served with the appropriate energy to power their businesses. In my line of work, I meet a lot of people from all walks of life. Usually when there are problems regarding power and electricity. And what we at Meralco realize is that a lot of these problems could have been avoided if people knew more about how power and electricity work here in the Philippines. So that's why we came up with Power Ideas. And today we're going to talk about the power supply chain. The power supply chain looks like this and has four main stakeholders: the generation, transmission, distribution, and the end users. So how does the power supply chain work and how does it affect power quality? First, the generation companies have to produce power. Then, the generated power flows through the transmission grid towers and sends it to distribution utilities like Meralco, who then delivers it to the end users. If there's a problem at any point in that chain, then you get power quality problems. There could be a shutdown in the power plant, a down transmission line, or there could be a problem with the end user's electrical system. Issues from any stakeholders can affect the power quality in the entire system. And that's when you get poor or bad power quality. With good power quality, everything just works. When you have bad power quality, equipment doesn't run, or worse, it can end up damaging your equipment. Of course, power quality problem can also happen in the distribution side. In the Philippines, power is mainly distributed through overhead distribution lines, which can be affected by things like thunderstorms, broken transmission line cables, landslides, floods in substations, broken poles, lightning strikes, and animals like snakes, birds, and squirrels. Yes, we now have squirrels in the Philippines. As for problems on the end user's part, well, let me show you how that can happen. Here's an example. I remember that time a customer called us because they believed their equipment was malfunctioning because of a voltage imbalance, which is a power quality issue. Upon arrival at the site, we checked the voltage and found no imbalance. The voltage was as it should be, and when we checked the customer's equipment, that's when we discovered the problem. Their equipment was not configured to the parameter set by the Philippine Distribution Code. These parameters can also be found in our technical guide to power quality. Just click the link in the description below to find out how to get a copy. Well, that's it for now. I hope you learned some things about power quality and the power supply chain. Thank you for watching. We'll have more useful information to share in our next episode. So, we'll see you here on Power Ideas.
You can also subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified when we upload new videos.
Hello and a wonderful day to everyone. I am Melanie Joy Senga, and on behalf of Meralco, I am pleased to welcome you to this afternoon's informative webinar on retail competition and open access, or RCOA. Wherever you are right now, in a quiet and comfortable spot, I hope our reception on Zoom is crisp and clear. It would be great if you use a headset or earphones for best quality audio. Our webinar will run for about an hour and a half, and we intend to give you data and insights from our energy experts on retail competition and open access. We encourage your immediate feedback through comments and questions that you may type in our Q&A tab, as we are allotting substantial time for questions you may want to ask our guest panelists later in the program. Just a reminder to identify yourselves. Just type in your name and your company so we can properly address you. Now, to formally open our webinar, let us all listen to the Vice President and Head of Meralco's Corporate Business Group, Ms. Maria Cecilia M. Domingo.
Thank you, Joy. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Meralco Power Up Live on Retail Competition and Open Access, or RCOA. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. But before we proceed, we wish to acknowledge the presence of senior executives representing their companies today. From the Department of Foreign Affairs, Director Joselito Jacinto, thank you for coming and for attending. Cold Chain Association of the Philippines President, Anthony Dizon. Thank you, sir, for being here. Power Concessionaires President, Eugenio Ganson. Supersonic Manufacturing President, Constantino Munoz. Inertia Consulting Corporation President, Sara Tantenco. Hello. De Los Santos Medical Center President, Elizabeth Dantes. Pure Gold Realty and Nation Realty President, Gurley C. SORIP Corporation President, Alvin T. Ionics EMS Incorporated SVP and COO, Jay Chavez. Thank you again, and to all our customers, thank you for joining us today. On December 29, 2020, the Energy Regulatory Commission, or ERC, announced that starting February 26, 2021, voluntary participation in the open access era has been expanded to cover end users with an average monthly peak demand of at least 500 kilowatts in the preceding 12 months. We welcome this strategic directive by the ERC, particularly at a time when our customers are in search for solutions and services that will protect or improve their profitability as we continue to feel the impact of the pandemic on our economy. This is the reason we have invited you today, our partners who are considering making that decision to transition to open access. We wish to share with you learnings on RCOA, new developments as guided by the ERC, what this means for your businesses, and why this would be beneficial to your businesses, should you decide to make the switch and source energy at the most competitive price. We are approaching the one-year mark from when we first detected the first case of COVID-19 in the country, and from when our cities were forced to undergo community quarantine. Really praise God that we are where we are now, despite the uncertainty and challenges we faced last year. I am blessed to be addressing all of you here today. A salute to all of us for surviving and powering through. By now, we have established routines in both at home and in the workplace. We have set up protocols to safeguard the most important element of our homes and businesses, our family, and our people. We in Meralco share the same sentiments. Serving our customers, listening, addressing concerns, and keeping the lights on during the pandemic could not have been possible if it weren't for our team of dedicated people who continue to risk their lives every day to live up to our commitment of providing reliable and dependable power under any kind of circumstances. Serving our customers, kayo po ang aming priority. We will always challenge ourselves to achieve a higher level of customer centricity to provide services and solutions that ultimately help your businesses. As we in Meralco adapt to this new normal and journey on the road to recovery, we want to help our customers do the same. There is power in collaboration, and we are your partner for progress now more than ever. We at Meralco are ready to assist you 24/7 for all your energy-related concerns. Allow us to strategize and work with you for a brighter tomorrow for your businesses and for our nation. In the meantime, I hope that this will be a productive afternoon for all of us. Please be safe, well, and healthy from wherever you are joining us for this Power Up Live. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Cecil Domingo, for that inspiring message. I still cannot believe that it has almost been a year since COVID-19 struck, and I'm also very thankful to be moderating this webinar for all of our customers today. Indeed, this is the perfect venue for our customers to be enlightened about the most recent updates on retail competition and open access, its qualifications, benefits, requirements, and how to go about it. So let's get right to that. Joining us now is the head of Meralco's Competitive Market Group. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Cheryl A. Castro.
Thanks, Joy. Today, We live in an era where we have the power of choice through technology, new laws, and best practices. As Ms. Cecil mentioned earlier, we have the power to make strategic decisions that will improve the way we conduct our businesses. That is what retail competition and open access is all about. It enables customers to source energy at the most competitive price. So join me in the next 20 minutes or so as I introduce you to retail competition and open access, or RCOA, and what's in it for your business. To guide you on the topics that we will be discussing, the presentation flow will focus on three main topics. First is a little background about RCOA, the what and whys, its benefits, and its players. Next is how do you make the switch now that you know that you actually have this option. And lastly, what lies ahead, where we are, and what are the developments that we could expect in the future related to RCOA. RCOA is already standard in other countries like Australia, New Zealand, USA, Singapore, among others. Here in our country, it started with the passing of RA 9136, or the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, or the EPIRA. The EPIRA provides the restructuring framework of the power industry towards RCOA. EPIRA envisions, as quoted, to ensure transparent and reasonable prices of electricity in a regime of free and fair competition and full public accountability to achieve greater operational and economic efficiency, promote consumer choice, and enhance the competitiveness of Philippine products in the global market. Since the EPIRA was passed, power industry is well on its way towards empowering its sectors and stakeholders. RCOA is one of the provisions introduced in the EPIRA. It is a level playing field where industry players, old and new, compete based on merit and value being offered. It is a venue where consumers are given the power to determine who will supply the electricity that will best suit their needs at the most reasonable cost. In the process, it aims to make the power industry more reliable, innovative, and competitive. From the illustration on the right, you'll see how the power industry has evolved with the advent of RCOA. It is the same flow of electricity from the generators down to our households or companies, but we now have the contestable customers and the suppliers. I'll introduce you to these players one by one in the slides to come. This slide shows that the unbundled electric bill, which actually mirrors the power supply chain shown earlier. Based on December 2020 power bill breakdown, generation portion makes up 55% of our bill. Being the largest portion of our bill, wouldn't it bring us good news when we know that we can now actually choose who to supply this portion of our bill? It can be the DU Steel, or your chosen supplier, or the DU's affiliated suppliers. A contestable customer now has a lot of choices actually. Regardless of your choice, the DU will stay to deliver to you the energy you procure, and thus we will still take care of billing the distribution willing portion of your bill, which are the transmission, distribution, taxes, and other charges. ERC has developed a website that will show you the statistics related to the contestable market. Based on buyurelectricity.com, there are 2,115 registered contestable customers in the Philippines as of November 2020, of which 1,859 is in Luzon. There are also so far 43 licensed retail electricity suppliers, 25 registered local retail electricity suppliers, and 47 suppliers of last resort across Luzon and Visayas. RCOA is not yet operational in Mindanao as of the moment. Yeah. Okay. Within Meralco's franchise area, we started with 238 contestable customers when RCOA had its initial commercial run last June 2013. These 38 contestable customers were served by one local retail electricity supplier and 5 retail suppliers. After more than 7 years, we now have 1,151 contestable customers being served by one local RES and 25 retail electricity suppliers. The 1,151 contestable customers is composed of 847 Phase 1 contestable customers and 304 Phase 2 contestable customers. We can see that the market is growing as more and more customers are benefiting from this power sector reform. Having discussed what RCOA is and how many customers have already participated, what really are the benefits that joining RCOA brings? First and foremost is consumer empowerment. As several times mentioned earlier, contestable customers now have the power of choice. Being part of the contestable market allows customers to choose their own retail electricity supplier. For example, this allows them to pick clean and environment-friendly sources of electricity. Next is higher efficiency. Open competition facilitates and encourages reforms in the industry for greater reliability, security, and affordability of the supply of electric power. Next is open access or free and fair competition. As more players join, the distribution utilities, electric cooperatives, and transmission companies have opened the access to their transmission and distribution networks and facilities for efficient flow of electricity. Next is interactive market. It opened up the possibility of more online transactions, more electricity trading, as more stakeholders are being introduced and more entities participate. And next is competitive rates. It fosters consumer environment, driving the market to offer more competitive prices. And lastly, energy profile advantage. Better profile may mean better rates. When you actually look at this benefits, it's actually an acronym for choice. So who are the players in RCOA? Firstly are the regulators, which are DOE or the Department of Energy and the Energy Regulatory Commission or the ERC. The Department of Energy takes care of the policies, while ERC enforces rules, regulations, including issuances of permits and licenses. The entire system works under the general direction and policies set in place by the DOE and regulated by the ERC. Another player is the Central Registration Body or the CRB. The CRB will administer retail market transactions such as registration, customer switching, information exchange, and settlement. Currently, it's the Independent Electricity Market Operator of the Philippines or the IMAP that is designated as the CRB. IMAP, which commenced operations last September 2018, runs also the electricity market operations of the WESM. I think I advanced my slide. So next up are the power industry participants, the generators, the transmission provider, which is the NGCP, the distribution utilities like Meralco, and the new players, which are the suppliers. So who are the suppliers? They are actually companies that act as brokers between the generators, the WESM, the distribution utilities, and the contestable customers. These suppliers, after stringent licensing and accreditation process approved by the ERC, must now compete for the business of contestable customers. Subject to market forces, the suppliers must provide competitive pricing, bundled contracts, unique value propositions, and campaigns to woo contestable customers. What's the difference then between a retail supplier, a local retail electricity supplier, and a SOLR? An LRES is actually a supplier, but it is the designated local retail electricity supplier arm of the distribution utility and can serve only within the franchise area where the DU operates. The supplier of last resort, on the other hand, is a backup plan should problem with any suppliers arise. Meralco is a certified supplier of last resort also. And the most important player are the contestable customers. Of course, they have to meet certain criteria in order to qualify, but the benefits and freedom it brings are many, as mentioned earlier, which is the benefits of RCOA. There are also still the captive customers. They are by default are status quo and will be serviced by the DU in the same way as before. Now, how does a customer become qualified? Now that we know that there are contestable customers, the next question is, how they become qualified. Not all customers may select a supplier. There are threshold and criteria by the regulators that must be met. Those qualified contestable customers under pieces 1 and 2 were issued a certificate of contestability by the ERC. Certificates of contestabilities were issued either directly to the customer or delivered via its distribution utility. But starting February 2021, it will now be the DU who would notify the customer of their qualification. It's actually January, but for January, the notification, particularly of Meralco, would be via a letter notifying you of your qualification. But starting February 2021, billing statement will be used as proof of contestability to be delivered directly to contestable customers that would qualify under phases 1, 2, and 3. What are these phases and how do we determine if a customer falls under phases 1 and 2? I'll discuss in a while. So switching to a supplier is currently voluntary. As mentioned, you have the power of choice. So staying with the DU, even if you are a qualified contestable customer, is still part of your choice. So these are the qualifications of a phase 1 contestable customer. First is for existing customers, it's the past 12-month average historical peak demand of 1 megawatt and up. A newly connected customer to pass the qualification for phase 1, its forecasted monthly peak demand should be 3 megawatt and up. And also for newly connected customers with actual consumption, their consumption should be with an average of 1 megawatt to 3 megawatt for 3 consecutive months to qualify under phase 1. For the phase 2, for existing customers should have a past 12-month average historical monthly peak demand of 750 kilowatt and up. And now, for the phase 3, which will start to join the RCOA, allowed to join the RCOA starting February 2021, the qualification should be the past 12-month average historical monthly peak demand should be 500 kilowatt and up. So this is the sample of the notification via your billing statement, which you will start receiving for those qualified customers will start receiving starting February 2021. So it would appear on the right portion of your bill where it states that you are a qualified contestable customers and can now choose your retail electricity supplier. And please keep a copy of this, as this will be your proof of your contestability. So how do you make the switch then? But before that, I want to discuss first the RCOA timeline. The initial commercial run of RCOA started last June 26, 2013, where voluntary migration of phase 1 contestable customers were allowed. Come June 26, 2016, or 3 years after, the contestability is allowed for phase 2, still on a voluntary migration. February 26, 2017 is the supposed mandatory contestability of phase 1 customers, but there was a case filed against it, so the mandatory contestability was halted. By April 26, 2017, voluntary contestability of phase 1 was again allowed. And last December 24, 2017, a new DOE circular allows voluntary contestability for phases 1 and 2. As such, beginning January 26, 2018, CRB started allowing voluntary contestability of both phases 1 and 2. And 2018, 3 years after again, the phase 3 can now join the contestable market still on a voluntary basis. Okay. There's a possibility that it would be lowered further, but what's firm right now is that, yeah, for phase 3, you can now join starting Feb 26, 2021. All right. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my clicker. Okay. I'll just click everything. Okay. How will contractual relationship change? For the captive market, we have what we call the agreement for the sale of electric energy, or the contract for electric service. It is a contract between the distribution utility and the end user. The ASEE, or the contract for electric energy, or the agreement for the sale of electric energy, covers provisions on connection, distribution wheeling services, and the supply of electricity, where the DU acts as the supplier. For the contestable market, we can now see a different contracts. There are actually contracts between an end user and Meralco as the distribution utility, which is the connection agreement. There will also be a contract between Meralco, or the distribution utility, and the retail electricity supplier, which we call the distribution wheeling services agreement. And of course, there will be a contract between an end user and a retail supplier for their energy supply, which we call the retail supply contract. And in the event that there will be a last resort supply event and we will be needing the services of a SOLR, then there will be a contract between an end user and a DU acting as a supplier of last resort. So that's how contractual relationship would change. All right. So in RCOA, Meralco, or a distribution utility, actually has 3 roles to play. First, still as a distribution utility, Meralco will still be the contestable customer's distribution utility, and it will serve the same role to both the captive and contestable customers in operating a distribution network within its franchise area. It also acts as the metering services provider. Meralco remains to be responsible for testing, sealing, and maintenance of all meters subject to ERC procedures. It shall conduct meter reading and data provision as a regulated service until such time as competitive metering services may be approved by the Commission. And lastly, as a supplier of last resort, it will act as a SOLR in the event of a last resort supply event. An example of such events will be presented in detail later. As a distribution utility, we perform billing and collection services. So for contestable customers, there are actually 2 billing schemes available for them. One is the single billing scheme, and the other is the dual billing scheme. ERC Resolution Number 9, Series of 2018, Article 3 mentions that contestable customer may choose from single or dual or multiple billing schemes, provided that said customer maintain a chosen billing option for at least 1 year. Section 3.4, a contestable customer shall send a request for a change in billing scheme to its incumbent rest at least 30 days prior to the start of intended billing scheme. So what are the difference in terms of contractual relationships between single billing and a dual billing scheme? For a single billing, the DU collects DWS bills to the rest, and it's the rest who bill and collects from the end users. So the contract remains as what I've shown earlier. There's a contract between contestable customer and the DU and the rest, and then the rest and the contestable customer would have still contracts between them. For dual billing, it's the DU who will collect the DWS bills or the distribution wheeling services bills to contestable customers. The retail suppliers separately collects generation charge to contestable customers. So, as compared to the single billing scheme, where the contract between the Meralco or the distribution utility and the customer is only the connection agreement, when the customer chose the dual billing scheme, there will be two contracts between the DU and the customer. First is the connection agreement, and the next is the distribution wheeling services agreement. There will be no contract between the retail supplier and the distribution utility for customers enrolled under dual billing scheme. All right, so how do we compare them? The Meralco's captive and contestable customer services processes. So how will the customer experience change? So for captive customers, we have service application and contracting, we have meter reading and data retrieval and analysis, there's billing, there's payment processing, and there's delinquency management. The same processes actually also applies for contestable customers, but there are additional services and there are a few changes. First, aside from service application, we now have customer switching process, where the customer or the rest applies for switching to the competitive retail electricity market, which we call the customer switching. I will discuss later in detail how the switching process happens and what are the requirements that you'll need for you to be able to switch to the contestable market. As mentioned earlier, the distribution utility also performs the role of a metering services provider. So we will still read your meter, except that now meter data is being required by the central registration body or the IMOP, as mentioned earlier, to be submitted to them daily. That's why it is important that prior to your switch to the competitive retail market, your meter is already load profile capable and also remote retrieval capable. So there is no need for our meter readers to personally visit the site every day to manually retrieve the meter data. Now, the data is being retrieved remotely for efficiency. For the billing, for single billing enrolled customers, it will now be your retail suppliers who will bill you directly every month. You will no longer receive a bill from Meralco. For customers enrolled in dual billing scheme, on the other hand, it is expected that you will receive two bills every month, one from your retail supplier to cover the generation portion, and the other from Meralco for the other bill concepts, or what we collectively call the distribution wheeling portion of the bill. For collection, for single billing enrolled customers, you will need to arrange the payment with your retail supplier. For customers enrolled in the dual billing scheme, payments have to be prepared separately, one for your retail supplier and the other one for the distribution utility. For delinquency management, it will actually depend on the party who failed to pay. We now have different possibilities. It could be a failure of a retail supplier to pay the distribution utility. It may also be a failure of the contestable customer to pay its retail supplier, or it may be a failure of a dual billing enrolled contestable customer to pay the DU or its retail supplier. So it depends on the case for delinquency management. So here's some tips or customer preparedness prior to contracting with retail electricity supplier. For contractual, there are actually three considerations: contractual, financial, and operational. For contractual, you need to update your Meralco contract. There, sorry. So what do we mean with update your Meralco contract? What we mean here is that your name stated in your contract with Meralco, which is also the name that would appear in your statement of account, should be the same name that would appear in your company documents such as articles of incorporation, SEC certificate, which will probably the same documents that the CRB would require from you. Those documents should match so that there will be no problem in terms of switching. So if your name in Meralco contract is currently different from the name stated in your articles of incorporation, it's better for you to initiate the update so that when the time comes that you actually decide to switch to the contestable market, it will be much easier. There will be also a need to sign a connection agreement with Meralco eventually in the process of your application to switch. There's also a need to carefully consider all available suppliers you can contract with and thoroughly review your RES contract before signing. For financial, you need to settle all financial obligations with Meralco. RES may require you also to pay a deposit for dual billing scheme enrolled customers. Meralco may also require you to pay a deposit prior to the switch. It is very important to settle all your financial obligations with Meralco because one of the requirements for switch is a certification from the distribution utility that you have no obligation with the DO in terms of arrearages. So that's one that you should look into. For operational, study current business operations through load mapping and profiling, learn energy consumption forecasting in medium and long-term horizons, ensure operations are aligned with your RES service or pricing offer, and for phases 1, 2, and 3 qualified customers, all billing cycle will fall on the 26th to 25th of the month. So you will notice that for some who are not yet in the 26th to 25th billing cycle, if you are to switch to RCOA or to the contestable market, there may be a need for you to change or align your billing schedule to 26th to 25th of the month. We will do that naman prior to your switch to the competitive market. So what are the requirements for switching? All right. So from the customer to the DU, what we actually prepared for the customer as a distribution utility is to install our COA compliant meter. It's written in ERC resolution what type of meter should be installed in the customer's premises. It's actually a load profile capable or interval reading capable meter. And there will be a need, as mentioned earlier, a signed and notarized connection agreement, and also the settlement of all arrears with the distribution utility prior to the switch. As mentioned, DU will issue to CRB a certification of no outstanding balance as proof of compliance by the contestable customer with its financial obligations with the DU. So a customer with arrears could not switch immediately to the contestable market. And also an existing distribution billing services agreement between the DU and your chosen retail electricity supplier. That's what the customer and the DU would need to look into when switching to the contestable market. For the rest, for the retail supplier, there's a requirement which are the metering installation and registration form, the single line diagram, the ERC certification of meter test results, the test and calibration reports for instrument transformers and meters. These are the requirements by the CRB from the metering services provider. And as mentioned, Meralco also acts as the metering services provider. So we will be the one to prepare the MIRF, but we will provide this to your retail supplier for signing naman of the contestable customer. And this will be submitted via the Central Registration and Settlement System. Central Registration and Settlement System, or the CRSS, is actually the business-to-business platform managed by the CRB or the IMAP for registration purposes. So this is the switching procedures and timeline. So first, actually the switching procedures and timeline usually happens in 1 month, one full month. The processing covers one full month, meaning if you are to switch February 26, we actually, the DU is actually advised of the list of potential contestable customers that would switch effective Feb 26 as early as January 26. So we have 1 month to prepare and to comply with all the requirements for the switch of a particular customer. So first, Meralco to coordinate and provide contestable customers the following. Ayan. Once we receive the list from the CRB of those scheduled for switch for a particular month, Meralco will coordinate and provide to the contestable customer the following: the connection agreement, the copy of the connection agreement for signing of the customer, and also some attachments which contains technical details such as FABD. Ano nga ba ang FABD nito? But those are attachments to the connection agreement. And then afterwards, so the contestable customer, from the time that we provided the connection agreement to up to the more or less around 12, 13, or 14th of the month, should submit the signed and notarized connection agreement. Contestable also must start clearing up its arrears with the distribution utility in preparation for the certification of the DU of which we call the certification of no outstanding balance. The CRB's usual deadline for submission of certification of no outstanding balance and endorsement of customers who will or who are about to switch actually happens on the 15th of the target switch month. So on or before the 15th of the target switch month, all eligibility requirements or all registration requirements should be complied with for us to be assured that your application for switch would be approved. So if we have a deadline, for example, from your RES for the payment of deposit, for the submission of connection agreement from the customer, that would all happen prior to the 15th, because 15th is our deadline, the DU's deadline to the CRB to confirm the customer's compliance to the switch requirements. Days above are of course subject to movements in case of legal and special non-working days. If the, of course, 15th, for example, would fall on a weekend or a legal holiday, usually IMAP or the CRB allows moving it to the next business day. So, and also after all the switch requirements have been complied with and we were able to endorse the switch to the IMAP and submit a certification of no outstanding balance, CRB CRB would provide the approved switch request to DU a few days before the effective switch. So if your effective switch is, for example, Feb 26, around Feb 24 or 25, we'll receive the list of approved switch from the central registration body. So that's for the single billing scheme. I'll click everything na nalilate ang aking pag-click. Alright, one more. Is it okay na? I can see the full screen. Okay. Alright. Okay, so for the dual billing scheme, it's actually the same deadline. 15th is still the deadline of the CRB for us to confirm the compliance to the switch requirements of a contestable customer, and will still also receive the notification from the CRB amount prior to the target effective switch date. I think the main difference here is the signing of the distribution wheeling services agreement and the connection agreement would now be between the customer and the DU. So there will be two contracts that the customer needs to sign, which is, as mentioned, the CA and the distribution wheeling services agreement. And also, it's the customer who would pay the needed deposit to the DU. In the case of the single billing scheme, it's actually the rest who pays the deposit to the DU. In the case of dual billing scheme, it's since you are the one, or the customer is the one who actually have DWSA or the distribution wheeling services agreement with the DU, then it will be you who will collect the deposit from. So I think that's the main difference, but the switch timeline actually follows that. A month, all preparations, all documents, all contracts will be provided to you as soon as we receive the list from the IMOP. So you'll receive notification letter from us, the contracts, the MIRF will start preparing for that, and we will ensure that it will be submitted on or before the 15th of the month for you to be able to switch on the target switch date. So we need to help each other here. We need to ensure that if you really are interested to switch, both the retail supplier, the customer, and the DU must help and collaborate for us to ensure that all the requirements would be fulfilled for us to meet the target switch date. So the last hat of the DU, we mentioned we still have wear the hat of a distribution utility, next as a metering services provider, and the last one is the supplier of last resort hat. So when an end user is not able to find its supplier by the deadline set by the ERC for the mandatory contestability, then that customer would fall under the supplier of last resort. But in the event naman of voluntary contestability, there are what we call the last resort supply event, where a customer would actually fall under the services of a supplier of last resort. What are these last resort supply events? As stated in one of the ERC resolutions, first is if the retail supplier or the local retail supplier has ceased to operate. Next, if the RES license has been revoked. The next is if the distribution wheeling services agreement between the retail supplier and the distribution utility has been terminated. And next is if the retail supplier or the local retail supplier is no longer permitted to trade energy in the WESM. Next is also if the retail supplier or the local retail supplier has given notice to the ERC that it will no longer provide supply services. And lastly is any other analogous event which the ERC may deem as a last resort supply event. Basically, what this event is saying and what's the purpose of the supplier of last resort, in RCOA, once you enter the contestable market, you will forever remain in the contestable market, meaning you can no longer revert to the captive market if you are a contestable customer. So in the event that your chosen retail supplier folds, get bankrupt, or it will no longer operate, you'll not be automatically be left hanging. Meron sasalo po sa inyo, which is the supplier of last resort, na in this case is the distribution utility. The supplier of last resort also acts na parang supplier. It's just that it has a different rate than the retail supplier. It's actually higher since this is a temporary solution to the problem. Of course, we want you to find immediately your supplier when your previous supplier falls or is no longer operating. But in those process where you are actually looking for a substitute or a different retail supplier, or you're in the process of signing a retail contract with another supplier, then the DU would serve your electricity needs in the meantime. So that's the purpose of the supplier of last resort. So yeah, we're towards the tail end of our presentation. Key takes away, shifting to retail competition. First is, of course, you need to become qualified. You need to have a proof of contestability. And as mentioned before, it's the ERC who actually issues the certificate of contestability. Now, it's the distribution utility who will advise you of your qualification through your statement of accounts. So if you think that you are qualified, it's better that you look for your statement of account and check if there's written there a portion. Usually, as it's shown naman earlier, it's on the right part of the bill, upper right part of the bill, where you will see a notation there if you are qualified or not. Of course, know your needs, review your power usage. If you want to request for your load profile from the distribution utility for you to help review or analyze or study your needs or your power usage, you can actually request it from the distribution utility. The first request is for free. That could cover 12-month data. And of course, when you know that you're ready, you can now switch to your chosen supplier that could offer you the best pricing option that suits your energy needs. But before you can do that, you need to comply with all the requirements, follow the timeline, settle all arrears, and submit the requirements signed and notarized. And you are all ready to switch to the competitive retail electricity market. So just to reiterate, these are the benefits of joining RCOA. But foremost really is choice. You can check the acronym CHOICE, Consumer Empowerment, Higher Efficiency, Open Access, Interactive Market, Competitive Rates, Energy Profile Advantage. It would spell out choice because now Contestable customers has the power of choice. So now, what lies ahead? Having discussed all this, we started with phase 1 as early as 2013. Now we are in 2021. We're starting the eligibility or the participation of phase 3 contestable customers. So what do we expect next? Of course, is the further lowering of contestability. RCOA is envisioned to reach the household level actually. So slowly, it would reach lower thresholds of contestability. As mentioned, we're now in phase 3. Who knows, by next year we'll already be under phase 4. Demand aggregation would actually also possibly happen. Demand and also the joining of government entities. As we know right now, it's mostly private entities who actually joins the contestable market. But who knows, government entities will start and be interested to join also the contestable market. And there's also a possibility of mandatory contestability for selected bases. And there's another program which is similar to RCOA, the Green Energy Option Program may also be implemented, and we're hearing it could actually be implemented this year. Green Energy Option Program, or the GEOP, as mentioned, is similar to RCOA except that the source which the customer would prefer is actually renewable options, purely renewable. And now you can switch to GEOP once implemented. So these are the things that we could expect in the next months and years. Of course, for inquiries, you please contact Meralco through customercare@meralco.com.ph, or you can also visit our website at www.meralco.com.ph, or you may call our business hotline at 02-16210. Maraming salamat po at muli, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much. And another big hand for our presenter, Ma'am Cheryl Castro. Clear, brief, and direct to the point. So So I believe that with the power of choice and the benefits of higher efficiency, interactive market, and competitive pricing offered by RCOA, there is much to gain for potential end users who happen to be our audience today. By the way, we will be providing all of you a copy of the presentation, so you don't have to worry if you missed some of the slides or the copies is blurred. So also, please take this chance to ask your questions or clarifications to our panelists. Don't forget to include your name and company so we can address you properly. All right, so let's go on to our question and answer segment. On board, we have three panelists joining us for this lively discussion. First is the head of Meralco's Corporate Business Technical Services Group. Say hello to Mr. Victor L. Risma IV. And then we also have the lead for the utilities industry of Meralco's Corporate Business Group. Please welcome Mr. Jose Manuel A. Santos. Good afternoon, Mr. Santos. And of course, completing the panel is our main presenter, Ms. Cheryl A. Castro. Welcome back, Ms. Castro. We have all three of them on screen right now. So are they ready? Are you ready? Okay, so I think they're all ready for your questions. I shall now direct the comments and queries our viewers have typed in earlier or since we started the program. Just a reminder again to please identify yourselves. Some of the questions that I read here do not have names or company names, so please do include your name and company name. Okay, so let's proceed to our first question. Okay, we have a question here from Mr. Chris Munoz. What do you mean we cannot go back if we avail of CC, or maybe what do you mean that we cannot go back if we become a contestable customer? This does seem like a question to be answered by Ms. Castro.
Hello, thank you for that question, sir. When you join the contestable market, you will no longer be allowed to revert to the captive market, meaning your option, once you enter into a contract with a retail supplier and you don't want to be under that supplier anymore, your option is to find a new retail supplier or maybe source from WESM. You cannot go to the distribution utility anymore. That would no longer be an option for you. So that would remain to be your option. Find a new res that would supply your energy needs. So that's what we mean, that you can no longer revert to the captive market.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Ms. Castro. Now moving on to the next question. Why is there 10% premium included in the SOLR rate or SOLR, and what is it for? So the SOLR here means Supplier of Last Resort. I would like to ask Mr. Santos to answer this for us. Mr. Santos.
Good afternoon. Why does ERC allow DU to impose a premium of 10% for SOLR services? First, solar services is only temporary. This 10% premium encourage you to look for your RES where you can avail a more competitive price. And with that 10% also, it would covers the expenses of the solar in procuring your unaccounted energy kasi unplanned po yung ating contract out ng energy nyo po sa WESM. So that would be the rationale for allowing the SOLR to impose 10% premium.
And also to add, the 10% premium is actually written in the ERC rules. It's not something that this distribution utility imposed. It's part of the rules.
Okay, so it's clear that it's part of the ERC rules, and so that's why we have the 10% premium on SOLR rate. Okay, thank you for clarifying that for us. Now, another question for Ms. Castro. I see that there is lowering of threshold in phase 3. What now can we expect for the next phases?
As mentioned, who knows, by next year, we could already be in phase 4. As there's a draft resolution released by ERC last year around September, when it mentioned that phase 4 is actually those consuming an average demand of 100 to 499 kilowatt for the past 12 months. So those customers who will qualify for phase 4 may possibly happen, who knows, next year. So we'll be waiting for the ERC decision on that. But that's the near possibility that we can think of related to the lowering of threshold.
Okay. So, just a follow-up question. Do you see that contestability will later on be on the household level?
That's a possibility. We just don't know up to how long would it take, but that's definitely a possibility. And there's also a concept of demand aggregation, where it will be allowed for entities to aggregate their demand for them to qualify as a contestable or as an aggregate. So instead of a contestable customer that is a one end user, several entities with individual demands, they could actually aggregate their demand so that if it reached the threshold, they will be called one aggregate, and then they can now join the contestable market. We're still waiting for the aggregation rules, and if ERC does release that, we will know when it would actually happen. So actually that aggregation can expedite the lowering of threshold, because even customers at the household level, if they can find a similar customer within the same contiguous area interested to join the contestable market, then they could aggregate their demand. So that one.
Okay, actually, that's the next question I'm supposed to ask you. The question from Mr. Filomeno Palino, is aggregation allowed in phase 3? But thank you for answering that for us in advance. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. Let me just read the chat box. Okay, is Mr. Vicoy Risma okay? Can he get in already? Not yet. Okay.
I'm already. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I have a question here for Mr. Santos. Mr. Santos, from Mr. Emmanuel Aco, shifting from Meralco captive to contestable under my power, will we be paying more? Sorry. Let me just... Did you hear that, Mr. Santos?
Hello. If I may repeat the question, shifting from being a captive customer to competitive market, will I be paying more? If that's the question, then
On a
there
per
are
kilowatt hour basis.
on a per kilowatt hour basis. Actually, supposed to be your move to switch to competitive market is for you to get a better price of power. So chances are you are depending on your load profile, then you could get the best possible power rate if your load profile are nice, or for example you are operating 24 hours a day, and then as been presented by our Miss She, you could avail the best price you could get in a competitive market. So most of our customers who have shifted to competitive market have experienced the lower price rates. That's my observation. I could share to you.
If I may add,
Go
if
ahead,
I may
Mr.
add, actually, a res will likely approach you as a customer and offer you a really lower rate compared to what the Meralco captive is getting, so or the DU is offering. So even before you switch, you can make the decision if you want to switch, because the rest will show you their offer, their price per kilowatt hour, and then if it's much lower than what you're getting now, then it's a big factor in you deciding to switch to the competitive market.
All right. Thank you very much. I hope we answered the question of Mr. Ako. Now, sir, Mr. Risma, I would like to ask you another question. This is intended to you. What if I have an establishment with multiple meters? Can I consolidate the meters to reach the threshold? Say if they consolidate all the meters, then they will reach a threshold of 500 kilowatts. Can they do that?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Joy. Yes, definitely. If you have multiple meters, or if your establishment has multiple meters, you can actually consolidate those meters and have a single service such that you would be able to reach the minimum threshold of 500 kilowatts for you to be a contestable customer. However, that new service that's created will have to be subject to eligibility requirements, which means that you have new service has to have a 12-month history, because we can no longer consider the 12-month history of the smaller meters or the smaller consumption meters before. So you'll have to wait for a certain period for you to be considered eligible if you want to consolidate meters.
So it's treated as new.
Yes, it will be treated as a new account.
All right.
But that can be done if you really want to, if you feel that you can even exceed 500 kilowatts, you could become contestable even earlier.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Risma. I hope we can see you now. I hope your camera will work. But anyway, we have another inquiry here from Anonymous. Does a contestable customer have the option to choose single or dual billing? If dual billing, will the contestable customer have the settlement of the DWS or Distribution Wheeling Services security deposit to DU or with rest? Okay, I'll repeat that question, but I would like Ms. Castro to clarify this for us. I hope you got my question, but I can repeat that for you. First
Yeah,
question, does a contestable customer have the option to choose single or dual billing?
yeah, that's the customer's choice, whether to go for single billing or dual billing.
Okay, now the next question is, if dual billing, will the contestable customer have the settlement of the DWS security deposit to the DU or with the rest?
For dual billing, the contract which covers the commercial terms, which is the Distribution Wheeling Services Agreement. Actually, commercial and the billing terms is covered in the Distribution Wheeling Services Agreement. So since it's the customer who will be signing the Distribution Wheeling Services Agreement with the DU, the deposit will be collected by the DU from the contestable customer.
Okay.
It's actually who's we're having contract with. If for the single billing we're having a contract with between the RES and the DU, then we collect the deposit from the RES. But since for the dual billing, the contract is between the customer or the end user and the distribution utility, then the collection of the deposit by the DU would be from the contestable customer.
Okay, clear. Thank you very much. And now I have another question for you, Ms. Castro. This is from Ms. April Mejares. What are the power generation metrics of retail suppliers?
Actually, we're not privy to that. We actually don't have access to the terms of the retail supply contract of the customers with their chosen suppliers.
Okay, so maybe they can just ask their retail electricity supplier, right?
Yes.
During the time of negotiation, maybe they can ask if they offer, say, renewable or coal.
Yes. It's for their chosen retail supplier to probably address.
Okay, very clear. Miss Mejares, please do start asking your rest. Okay, now our next question here, I would like to direct this to Mr. Vicoy Risma. This is from Mr. Arnel Pindok from Union Galva Steel Corporation. His question is, what if there is a meter trouble based on IMOPS meter data? Mr. Risma? Okay. We'll get back to Mr. Risma. I think he's having trouble, but
Can you repeat the question, Melai?
yeah.
It kind of cut out.
Okay.
From Mr. Arnel Tindok of Union Galva Steel.
Yes, that is right, Mr. Risma. What if there is a meter trouble based on IMOPS meter data? Maybe he's referring
I
Okay.
can help answer.
Okay, would you like to chime in, Ms. Castro?
Yeah, if there's a meter trouble from IMAP, us as wearing the hat of a retail metering services provider would actually address that meter trouble report. So that one. So it depends actually on the trouble stated in the meter trouble report. So whatever it's stated there, we will address that as the metering services provider.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. She is correct because the DU is the default metering services provider. So depending on the type of trouble or what meter is involved, it will be the DU or Meralco who will be handling the trouble on the meter.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your answer. So even if a customer switches to the retail electricity supplier, Meralco or the DU remains to be the to be responsible for the meter.
Yes,
That's correct, Joy.
correct.
Okay, so moving on to our next question. This is from Mr. Henry Cabasag of Macro Asia SATS Food Industries. Who are the retail suppliers and how can we know their rates? Maybe Ms. Castro knows the different retail suppliers you can share to our customers.
Actually, there's a website by ERC. It's just sad that it's down right now, but it's supposed to include all the existing licensed retail electricity suppliers at the moment, those approved local retail suppliers, and those certified supplier of last resort. Actually, even the list of potential contestable customers should be published on that website. So hopefully it would be up soon. We're wishing that it's down right now. It's because ERC is actually updating the website. But some sample of retail suppliers. For local supplier, we have Empower. For retail supplier, we have Vantage. We have also Aboitiz affiliated retail suppliers, Ayala affiliated retail suppliers, San Miguel affiliated, FGen affiliated. So mostly yung mga generators natin has affiliated retail suppliers.
So ang dami palang retail electricity suppliers to choose from, right?
Yeah.
So,
actually, as mentioned earlier, as of November, it's around 43. If I'm not mistaken, it's around 43. The customer just need to make sure that they are actually licensed. Retail supplier needs to secure a license from the ERC before they could operate as a retail electricity supplier.
Understand. Okay, maraming salamat for the tip, Miss Castro. And now, another question from Engineer Annette Marquez. Do we expect from Meralco statement saying that we are qualified as contestable customer? Also, are we saying that smart metering is a requirement when we switch? Would you like to clarify this? Would you like to answer this for us, Mr. Santos?
Thank you, Miss Annette, for that question. Actually, yeah, through your billing starting, I think, February, no, you'll be receiving, if you are a qualified contestable customer, there will be an ad stating that you are qualified contestable customers and you can now transact your business with RES. You can choose your RES. So, and then this WESM or ERC compliant metering is smart because they are load profile capable, and then they have the features of automatic meter reading, and then the DU can read them remotely. So those are the features of a smart meter. I hope that can answer your question, Ms. Annette.
All right. It's clear naman, Sir Joey. So once they switch or once they are already installed with an LP capable meter and modem or AMR, so they don't expect our meter readers not to do physical meter reading, no? Because some of my clients still ask me up to now why they don't see meter readers going to their premises every month. So I guess we just have to make it clear to everyone that the reason for that is because the meter installed at your premises is already LP capable or load profile capable, and it has the capacity to retrieve meter data remotely. Okay.
Yes.
That's right, Ms. Joy.
Okay,
Actually,
thank you.
Joy, the minimum requirement of regulation is a load profile capable meter. But right now, since the requirement of the CRB is a daily provision of meter data, we deem that it's important that the meter installed in the contestable customer's premises is a smart meter or somebody that, not somebody, something that we could remotely retrieve the data. The data is something that we could remotely retrieve. Because if it's daily, and then we need to go to the site every day, that would be so difficult for the case of our meter readers, no? That's why we propose that it should really be a smart meter. And related also to the question earlier that mentioned about meter trouble, siguro the possibility na lang na makikita natin ng ating mga meter reader sa site is when remote retrieval actually failed. Yung may meter trouble. Kaya makikita natin ang ating meter reader sa site. But if there's no problem, the communication to the meter is 100% every day, meaning we were able to retrieve the needed meter data every day, then you can expect that there will be no meter reader that the customer would see on site.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we have so many questions here, no, which is good. It means that our customers are really interested and maybe they are already excited to participate in the open access and retail competition. So, Mr. Santos, Engineer Romel Sacrament of Pure Gold is asking, when we switch to another RES, would the GMBD be waived from our billing? Can you expound on this? Can you clarify?
All right. Okay. GMBD is based on your applied load, electrical applied load. So, and it is agreed upon based on the contract contained in the CA, connection agreement. So, if you will to switch to RES, and then our contract will still be binding. So, the GMBD will not be waived, I'm afraid, because that's our contractual obligations agreed upon. So, I hope that's clear our question with the GMBD. Thank you.
So maybe to add to that, the GMBD is part of the distribution charges, no, which is the DU charges. So the
right.
only difference when they switch to the open access or when they switch to RS is the generation portion of the bill, right? So
That's right.
the GMBD will still be there. It's just a pass-through charge through their res who will be collecting or who will do the billing from the contestable customer. So I hope I helped answer your question. But anyway, let's proceed to the next question. Mr. Risma, I would like you to answer this. This is from Mr. Remo De Torres of GF Micro Optics Philippines Incorporated. What if we do not switch to res, even if you are qualified contestable customer? Interesting question. Mr. Risma? Okay. Would you like to answer this for us, Ms. Castro?
Can you repeat the question, Joy?
Okay.
What if?
What if we do not switch to the res, even if we are qualified contestable customer? What if they still want to stay with the DE?
That would be okay. That's part of your choice because moving to the contestable market is currently voluntary. So you're not required to move to retail supplier should you opt to. You can stay with the distribution utility as long as participation to the market is voluntary.
Okay, so walang sapilitan. If they still want to stay with the DU, they can stay for as long as it's still voluntary. Okay,
as we mentioned, one of the benefits of RCOA is the power of choice, and one of their choices are being or they stay with the DU. So that's possible.
Tama naman. Okay, next, our question from Mr. Kent Real of One Stop Warehousing Solutions Incorporated. How will the energy contract affect if we install or we have an existing renewable energy like solar panels, or if we use generator sets before or after entering the res contract? In short, may effect ba to sa magiging contract nila if they have renewable energy solar panels installed at their premises? Who would like to answer this? Okay, Mr. Santos, go ahead.
That's a good question from Mr. Kent. Actually, it would be better na before you enter into a res contract or retail supply contract, you considered your generator or your renewable energy like solar panel, so that that could be carved out from the contracted capacity or contracted energy that you will be entering into contract with the res. Most of these res contract have this minimum energy quantity as an agreement, which is take or pay. Meaning, if you contracted a 100 kilowatt hour, for example, an energy usage for 1 month, and then you only consume 90 kilowatt hour in 1 month, but you still have to pay the cost for 100 kilowatt hour. So that means if you install a renewable energy after you enter into contract with the res, and that would add to your expense, meaning even you did not meet the 100 kilowatt hour because it is already contracted out or signed, agreed upon, then you still have to pay it. But then again, that's only a sample of a res contract. If you could haggle with the res that you, in case you have a future plan of installing solar panel or generator, you may include in your contract that by this time that I'm installing a solar panel, can you net out it from our contracted capacity or MEQ or minimum energy quantity. So that's the beauty of retail competition. You can stipulate any agreement that is suitable for your plans or for your operation. I hope that could help you, Mr. Kent.
Okay, thank you. This is a question that I would like to refer to Mr. Risma. Is Mr. Risma on? Okay, already. Okay, so
Yes,
this is
I'm
from
here.
Engineer Richard Villanueva from Malito Commercial Complex, Alabang. I would like to ask if we can consolidate our 3 meters from different circuit connections. Note that we are an open mall and our electric supplies are connected from different locations. Can they consolidate their 3 meters?
If they're in a contiguous area, if the meters are in a contiguous area, that's possible for for them to be consolidated, but it will be a technical solution. Of course, you'll have to do some rewiring. However, if they are in different locations totally, magkakalayo sila, they're from far away, that would mean the only way to consolidate them would be aggregation, which is not yet allowed. So for now, aggregation is not yet allowed, but if they're in a contiguous area and there's a technical means of consolidating them, which means they need to do some rewiring, it's possible for them to have those 3 meters consolidated into one service. We've
I think Mr. Risma,
seen that
okay.
happen in other commerce. They're in confusion about kinorek sila into one.
I think you're losing Mr. Risma. But we'll get back to you, Mr. Risma. I'll move on to the next question. What is the first step in switching? Because this is from Engineer Annette Marquez, head of GSD from Manila Polo Club. She wasn't able to attend the earlier presentation. So, Ms. She, can you explain it for Ms. Annette? What is the first step in the switching?
Hello, Miss Annette. The first thing is you need to know if you are a qualified contestable customer. If you are a qualified phase 1 and phase 2 customers, most probably ERC was able to issue a certificate of contestability already to you. But if you are a qualified phase 3 customers, as mentioned, the recently released ERC resolution mentioned that it would be the distribution utility who would now advise the qualified customers of their eligibility. So we just need to wait for your billing statement and see if there is a notation there citing that you are qualified. And also this month, we release letters for qualified contestable customers to notify them of their qualification or eligibility. So if you receive the letter, then you are qualified. Now, once you know that you are qualified, the next thing that you should do is actually look for a retail supplier that could address your energy needs. There are websites, actually it should be the ERC who should post this, the different retail electricity suppliers' contact details, what are their rates. There are actually websites that could tell them general information about the retail supplier, about their average rate, and then for further detailed questions, they could just contact their chosen retail supplier, no? But really, the first thing is for them to get notified that they are qualified, look for a retail supplier, and then the retail supplier would actually help them in the switching process.
Okay, I hope that helps Miss Annette. But don't worry, because we will provide all of you a copy of the presentation that was earlier used by Miss Castro, so you can review it. You can use that as your reference, and also your Meralco relationship managers or biz partners, managers can always guide you. Just call them, just reach out to them. They will guide you on the next steps. Okay, so Mr. Santos, Mr. Mario Cesario is asking, what about the stability of the supply? Will there be an issue? Will that be guaranteed by the retail electricity supplier?
I think that's the essence of this IPIRA law, is to enhance the quality and also the capacity. That's why they open up the market in generation side. And as per the IPIRA, even foreign investors can 100% own a generating plant. So that's why I think this capacity will be addressed by this new entry of a new power plant. Especially right now, the government is really serious in pushing for renewable energy, which also our company Meralco is investing, so that we could beef up capacity, at the same time support the green energy program of our government. I hope that could appease us when it comes to availability of supply.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Santos. I would like to ask you again, sir. This is from Mr. Fernando R. Ferido, admin and ECO of Suzuki Philippines Incorporated. He's asking, prior deciding and shifting to customer phase 2 with a consumption average of 139,000 kilowatts per month, could the DU or Meralco provide us a sample of cost analysis? So maybe what he's asking if we can provide him a sample bill when he switched to retail electricity supplier. Is that his question?
I think same with
Anyway,
us.
let's try to answer it the way we understand it.
Yeah, actually, with regards to simulation of bill, when you entered into contract with the RES, the best entity or person who could answer that is the RES themselves, because that would be depending on the offered price or power rate that they can offer to you. And there are a lot of pricing that they can offer, be it time of use, or based on load profile, or based on load factor. So that would be, I think, the best person to answer you is really the RES, because we are not privy with the rates that they're offering with their contestable customers. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Um, Sorry, I missed this question earlier. This is from J.A. Luarca, from Panasonic Manufacturing Philippines Corporation. Um, Mr. Sorry, if is it Mr. Luarca? The questions are: is switching to RCOA voluntary or mandatory? Because as said earlier in the first few slides, switching will be voluntary, but as stated in the remaining last slides, it shows that it is mandatory. Um, Ms. Cheryl Castro, can you clarify this one? I'm not sure which slide he's referring to, um, but definitely our
It's
switching
voluntary.
is voluntary as of the moment. But I'm not sure what he's referring to as what.
Maybe he's referring to the slide on the next developments, because
Okay.
that's actually a possibility. But right now, the status is voluntary contestability. It's not yet mandated.
All right. Thank you. And then his next question is there any downtime while switching to our COA? If there's any, please indicate how long will it take?
Downtime meaning you will be disconnected from the
Interruption.
grid or interruption.
Yeah.
No. It should be as seamless as possible. It's the contractual terms that are being negotiated, but as far as the power being supplied to you, there should be no change.
Okay.
Possibly they would encounter an interruption if there are, for example, there's a need to update their metering facilities, no? But if there's no major activity naman needed for us to update their metering facilities, then there's no reason for them to get their power to get interrupted. So there's no downtime.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So that should be clear, Mr. Luarca. It's still voluntary, and there's no downtime when you switch to our COA. It's just more of the contract part. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. This is from Mr. Romel Kakayan of INCGS. If we will enroll to the ARCOA and we will have a RES to attend for our account, who will be monitoring the distribution facilities we are connected? If we will be applying for an upgrading, to whom we will submit our application, and who will install the new facilities? All right, so this is an easy question, and Mr. Santos, please answer this.
Hi, thank you for that question. It's good that you asked this, because even a contestable customers switch to the competitive retail electricity market, we still have this relationship. technically we are still connected because your facilities will be connected to our distribution system or what we call the grid. So anything related to power quality, adequacy, or service interruptions or trouble, and then we are here to address that. So it's like that we still have this what we call again the technical relationship that we will be taking care of for you. So your only concern with your rest is the energy that you are buying from them. But when it comes to upgrading of facilities or reduction of contracted capacity, we will still be engaging you with that aspect of concerns. Hope
Which is good. Yeah, which is good,
yeah.
no, because at least now, once they switch to REST, they have the REST manager, or I'm not sure what they call them, and then they also have the relationship manager from the DU or Meralco. So dalawa ang nag-aalaga sa account nyo. Better
Yes.
for the contestable customer.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Now, this is another question from Mr. Galvin Laguera of De Los Santos Medical Center. What would be the impact should the power consumption go below the minimum threshold to qualify as a contestable customer? I would like to direct this question to Miss Castro.
Okay, the basis for contestability is your average demand registration for the past 12 months. So if you are already qualified the past months, for example, you were already advised that you are a qualified contestable customer, and then the next month your consumption suddenly dropped below the threshold, it's okay as long as you already bridge that the threshold level and you were able to qualify at one point, then you are already considered a qualified contestable customer, even if your consumption or your demand dropped.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I have a phone-in question. What will be now the role of Meralco with regard to billing price? What part does Meralco now can get from the consumer consumption? Okay, so this question, would you like to answer this, Michelle?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the
Ah,
question.
okay, the question is,
What?
um, either of you can answer. What will be now the role of Meralco with regard to billing price? Billing. So, what part does Meralco now can get from the consumer consumption?
Can get from the consumer consumption.
Yes. Maybe what they want to know is what part of the bill, if the rest is now the one providing the billing for the contestable customer, what part of the bill goes to Meralco? So the answer to this is, correct me if I'm wrong, the distribution wheeling charges is part of the Meralco billing. So the distribution wheeling charges is just a pass-through charge
That's
which
correct.
is being collected by the retail electricity supplier.
Mhm.
Is it
Actually, that's correct. We still bill the distribution wheeling services portion of the bill. Distribution wheeling services means all the other bill components except the generation portion. But we know that even the portion of the distribution wheeling services charges are pass-through charges. Only the demand, supply, and meter charges directly goes to Meralco. Even the transmission charge, the VAT, the taxes, and all goes to a particular entity like Transco for transmission, government for the VAT. So that's the case. So even if we collect it, for example, from the rest, and then the rest would pay us, we remit that to the corresponding entities pa rin naman for those non-distribution metering supply related collection.
Ayan, thank you. So we'll take in three more questions. This is from Mr. Chris Munoz. What are the advantages and disadvantages of having single and dual billing? Ms. Castro, What are the
Um,
advantages and disadvantages?
Actually, on the D's point of view, it's just a difference on who to bill. For dual billing, we bill the end user, and for the single billing, we bill the rest. But I guess it's actually the customer would feel the difference as regards the single or dual billing scheme. For example, for dual billing, he'll receive two billing, which they used to receive one single billing only. But if they're okay with that, then there will be no issue. So I guess it would really be the customer who could assess the benefits of a single over a dual billing. It's just it remains to be an option, but as mentioned, as far as the DU is concerned, it's just a difference on who to contract with. Maybe it have impact on the rates that would be offered to them by their retail supplier, but since we're not privy to the rates being offered by their retail suppliers to them, it's they could actually they'll be the one who could actually know the differences if the rest and the customer actually talks about the rate and the difference it would be if they go to the single billing scheme or the dual billing scheme.
Alright. And also, I believe some of our customers have issues on tax. So some of them prefer to have dual billing instead of single billing, right? So if you're the customer that has concerns on tax, then you can opt to go for dual billing. Okay, and then next, second to the last question. Kapag po ba nakapili ako ng res, how long will the contract be? How am I going to switch to another res? Ayan, contracting issues, Miss Castro.
Mm. Um, the the length of the stay under that particular rest would actually depend on their contracts, the terms of their contracts. It could be open-ended contract. It could be, let's say, maximum of 2 years, 5 years. There's actually there's no definite or something that is written in the rules as regards the term of the retail supply contract. So yeah, could be open-ended as mentioned, or it could be as you can meaning open-ended that you can actually transfer after a month to another retail supplier, or somebody has definite date specified there. So yeah, it depends really on the terms of the retail supply contract where the customer entered into. That's why the customer really needs to review the provisions of the retail supply contract for them to know what are the provisions there that could actually benefit them, and what are the exit clause, for example. So that one. Now, if they, for example, the contract with the retail supplier ended, they have the option to look for another supplier prior to the termination, so that even if the contract is not yet terminated, they're in the process of negotiating now with another rest so that they could transfer na. For example, it would end this month. Then next month, they could actually transfer to another retail supplier already, as long as they will be able to comply with all the switch requirements.
Very well said, Miss Castro. Thank you very much. Now, our last question. We're sorry, we still have a lot of questions, but don't worry, we will try our best to answer them one by one, even after the webinar. This is from Miss Sarah Tantenko from Inertia Consulting. Hello, Sarah. Will the notice of eligibility appear only once in customer's bill? In such case, customer must always pay attention to the notices and not lose such specific bill. Thank you. Now, Mr. Santos.
Yes. Just I think there's a good answer to that question, because once you are qualified contestable customer, the bill ad notifying you that you are qualified customers will continue on your bill, appearing on your bill month on month, until such time that you switch to the competitive retail electricity market. So don't worry that if you lose one of those bill and you still not have switched to competitive market, then the following month bill will you still have this proof of eligibility. I just like to answer some questions related to customers who already switched to competitive market. So don't worry, as I mentioned, we still have these technical relationships. So anything which will pertain to power interruption or increase of capacity or anything related to power, we still have to address that. We still are the ones who will cater for your upgrading of facilities, schedule of power interruption or maintenance, so power quality concerns. So we're still there beside you to help you out. So Meralco will not be out of the picture even you shifted to competitive retail electricity market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santos. It's been a most enlightening forum with your relevant questions answered and issues clarified by our guest and keynote presenter. And on behalf of Meralco, I thank our three panelists for sharing their time and experiences with us. Thank you, Mr. Victor Risma the fourth, Mr. Jose Manuel Santos, and Ms. Cheryl Castro. Now, for those questions that we were unable to tackle during the Q&A portion, we will reach out to you after this webinar to answer your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, that officially concludes this afternoon's webinar, Update on Retail Competition and Open Access. We hope to do this more often. That is why we are posting the link to our feedback form at the Q&A panel. Can you already see it? Okay, and if you have any more clarifications, please do not hesitate to contact Meralco, whose lines are always open for you. This has been Melanie Joy Senga. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day.